You're listening to Speak Now with Gena, right here at 95.7 FM, WEOT. Okay, in the studio, I am so honored to have one of the a businessman who's been in the community for, how long have you been here?
Well, I'm born and raised in Fort Wayne, but as a business, I've been doing it full time for about 25 years.
Tyrone of Tygeron Graphics. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming in.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
So now I just want to start off with you shared when I asked if you would be willing to come on and talk to me about business in the Black community, you shared a YouTube video with me, and I just want to play a portion of that to get us started, okay?
Sure.
Then, very interesting, very intense. But thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, sure. My pleasure. I was very, very moved by it. And, I've shared it with quite a few people and gotten some real positive feedback because it opens, it talks about a lot of different aspects of just our lives in the Black community from a business standpoint, just and how it affects everyday life and existence.
I want to talk about that has a big impact on you, but you have a big impact on the community. Let's talk about you, Tygeron Graphics, and how you got started and how do you sustain in the community.
Okay, first of all, I feel kind of goofy because I'm
Why?
sitting here with this big grin on my face because this is so cool.
Thank you.
I just love seeing you do what you do, working the board and everything. And I've seen radio studios or whatever, but I've never been on the mic or whatever, and seen like firsthand like this going on and everything. And just to think that you're reaching out to folk, you don't know who's hearing what or whatever, but it's going out there and it's going where it needs to go, and people who are hearing it are the people who need to hear it. So that's real cool. So
thank you.
I know people can't see the big grin on my face. So.
Thank you. But this wasn't me 3 years ago. 5 years ago, I would have never have done this.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about.
I would have been shaking in my boots like, who, me? So
yeah.
Now, each time. But when I interview people like you in the community who support the community, which means you support me, it feeds me, it frees me,
Yeah,
so I love
nice.
It. Yeah.
Well, thank you again. Just a little bit of history about Tygeron Graphics. I print T-shirts. That's what I do. And I do other things like, hoodies, sweatshirts, different stuff like that. But I do screen printing. And I've actually been involved in screen printing since the early 80s. And a lot of people ask me, man, how'd you get involved in doing screen printing and, printing shirts and stuff like that? And I usually tell people Ghostbusters. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute. Your brother just went all left. What does that have to do with screen printing? When the Ghostbusters movie first came out, I was just so taken by that Ghostbusters logo. I thought that was one of the most well-done graphics and how it represented the movie. It was simple. It was just a couple colors or whatever. It wasn't corny. It just went right to the point. I was just really kind of fascinated with that logo. And I had done a little screen printing in junior high school, back in the day or whatever. And so I thought, what? I bet I could print one of these on a shirt. Had no idea how to screen print. Like I said, I had a little experience or whatever. So long story short, I went and got a screen printing kit, set it up on my kitchen table, and actually printed me a Ghostbusters logo. And what's real funny is I have no idea what happened to that shirt. And I was like, if I could find it, I'd autograph it and sell it on eBay or whatever. But that's some serious throwback. But that's how I got involved in screen printing. And then I kind of stepped away from it for a while. I worked 12 years at the Allen County Public Library as a branch assistant with Condra Ridley over at the old Pontiac Branch Library on Warsaw Street. And back in '86 is when I kind of got a little bit more into screen printing. And I think it was '86 when Dr. King's was made his birthday was made a national holiday.
Yes.
They established a national holiday. And I thought, man, I could print some shirts with his image on it and sell them and stuff. And so I actually did that again on my kitchen table. My then girlfriend, now wife, hold the screen. I'd pull the squeegee and let the ink dry, and then I'd heat set it. And so, man, I sold like quite a few shirts or
Did
whatever.
you really?
Oh, man, and those shirts from back in the day, you wash them, they'd fade. It was like, but they were good for like a hot minute or whatever. But that was when I came to realize it's like, man, people want shirts. People find out you print, and they're like, man, I got a softball team, or I got a family reunion, because I do tons of family reunions. And so, and I always have to tell people, anything you want to learn how to do, you can learn how to do it, especially now where information is available via the internet and other resources. You walking around with all the information in the world on that thing right there, on that smartphone. Mm-hmm. You got access to information, and information is a commodity just like anything else. It's information is probably more valuable. I know it's more valuable than people give it credit for, because with information, it's just limitless where you can go with the proper information. Just like you doing this. Right. Yes. And so so I utilized the resources at hand working at the library, and I taught myself how to screen print. And so the rest is pretty much history. And I actually got fired from the library after 12 years, which was kind of an experience, because people think, man, what'd you get fired for? Was it embezzlement or what? No, it wasn't nothing that deep. And but what it was a liberation. It was an emancipation. That's what it was. Not to equate the library with a plantation or whatever, but it was something I had done. We get into this comfort zone, where you got this steady paycheck and everything, and so we're kind of like reluctant to step out there and do what it is that we want to do. Right. And you just saw me. I wrote down fear right here, just so I'd make sure I talked about the concept of fear, which I'll try to remember to talk about a little bit later, but when I got fired, it was just such an easy transition, because I had been thinking about doing it full time for a long time. But because of fear, I was so reluctant to step out there into that unknown. And so I actually got kicked out into that unknown. But it was more known than I gave it. It
was divine intervention, wasn't it?
Oh, most definitely was divine intervention. Because I think if you are open to be where it is that you want to be, it'll be facilitated. You're on your own volition or by whatever, but
I really want to talk about you, but the guy, one of the guys from Shark Tank said the same thing. He got fired from ice cream store as a kid.
Oh, yeah, he got that from me. I talked to him. He said,
"Did you talk to him?"
I said, "Man, can I use that store?" Up. And I was like, "I said, as long as you give me credit." No, I'm lying. I'm sorry. I told you I'd act right on your show. I lied.
Okay. So but yes, sometimes you get pushed when you won't step.
Right,
That's
exactly.
Awesome.
Yes, most definitely. And getting fired gives you a perspective, because people talk about job security. As long as the decision of you coming to work for me is in my hands, that's not job security. I might have to downsize. I might decide I don't like you and then fire you. That's not job security. But as long as you can work for yourself, as long as you're in a position to do whatever it is that you do and make money, whether it's $5, whether it's $5,000, that's job security. The decision is more so in your hands. You have more control over your life, basically.
Right. Did you have fear stepping into
Oh my gosh! Mm-hmm. Yes, it was. There's a saying, and I don't know where it originated, and I need to look it up so I can give credit to whomever said it. But basically, everything that you're meant to do or where it is that you want to go is right on the other side of fear. When I heard it put that way, that just like really blew me away, because that was very straightforward, very, very succinct the way that was put. And it's like, you can see it, you can think it, but you've got that fear obstacle between you and where it is that you're supposed to go. Right. And again, back to you. You were just telling me about you and how fearful you were, how, doing what it is that you do, and you coming up on 3 years doing this. Mm-hmm. What's cool is you can look back in retrospect and see where you were and how it's empowering. So anything else that you decide that you want to do, from having the experiences of coming to where you are right now and overcoming that fear, that lets you know that pretty much whatever it is you decide you want to do, you can do it.
That's cool.
And, so it's like once you get that taste, then you realize it's not really as scary as it is, especially being on the other side, looking back where you came from. It's like, man, I should have done this a whole lot sooner.
That's true.
But you may not have been ready, not mature enough. Your head might not have been in the right place or whatever. But that fear thing, because people people talk about, will come up with every excuse why we can't do a particular something. Oh man, I don't have the money. You can get money, so you can cross that off the list. I don't have time. You got time. You got the same 24 hours in a day that everybody else who's, quote, successful has. So it's about what you do with those 24 hours. So time, that's not an excuse.
And what you identify as success, because success is not always just monetary.
Yes, exactly.
Success, yeah, there's many different. I think that's one of the reasons why you are so grounded in the community. Have the people grounded you, or were you grounded before you started Tygeron Graphics?
You know what? A combination of both. I look at how I was raised. You know, my mom and dad, what they did. My mom chose to stay at home, take care of the family. My dad worked every day, and actually worked 2 jobs. One of the, and I know I'm kind of going like in a little direction, but one of my life's regrets. People say, "Oh, I have no regrets." One regret that I have is that I was not old enough and mature enough during my dad's life. My head, I mean, I wasn't thinking in terms because he passed when I was 17. But being an adult and looking back, I never told him how proud I was of him for what it was that he did. He was a professional baker here in Fort Wayne. Oh, wow. Top of his game. Only brother that I know even to this day who's a professional baker. And of course there are many, but he was an example. And again, I see now what an example he was for me. I always say that you teach best by example, and he was a shining example of being good at what you do. Right. And so, and then like I said, you know, my mom and dad both, they were like tremendous influences. And so that kept me grounded, okay, because, you know, we weren't rich, you know, we weren't like privileged as they say or whatever. We just, you know, just a family getting by doing what we did. And as far as the community, oh my gosh, very, very grounding. I've had a lot of examples of entrepreneurship, who I will name, and I meant to tell you a lot of during our time here, I might talk about, you know, like various businesses, and I thought about like giving like shout outs to people. Then I thought, when you start naming folk, you miss somebody, and then the person that you missed,
you know, they coming back.
Oh yeah, the person that you missed that you thought, oh my gosh, I should have. Yeah, exactly. So I thought I'll just speak in kind of vague generalities of like various businesses as they come to mind or whatever. Right. But I will say, Mr. Brownlee, Thomas Brownlee. Yes. I didn't know anybody else. That was the store in the community, you know. And I remember them with the truck and everything, and then going in the store and different stuff. And you know, Mrs. Brownlee, of course, is like still around. And so that was just a serious example for me. And Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Frost Illustrated, whole journalism thing, and just the longevity of Frost Illustrated, you know, so I really had to give them some props. Link Chapman with Links. Oh yeah. I remember when they went from the building, which was at the where I always say Reverend Greg, the church, right there on Lafayette. Link, that used to be the old Links, and then when they built the new Links, I'm like, oh my gosh, what are they building? This huge facility with this great big parking lot, and I realized what it was, you know, with the cinema and everything, and the bowling alley and the skating rink and different stuff, and it was just such a tremendous boost to know, wow, this is somebody from the community, this is somebody black, this is somebody who looks like me, and so that was a tremendous influence, and I didn't really know him personally, you know, but he was very visible in the community, and that was awesome.
You know, you've just really touched onto something, because when I moved here, I grew up here, and then we moved away when my parents divorced. But when I came back, those people were here. But back in the day, that was the community. Yes. Tall Man's Records and all of those places were grounded in the community, and we supported those places.
Yes, most definitely. Yeah, and you mentioned Tall Man, somebody there, because there's a Facebook page I always try to give a shout out to. It's called I Grew Up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Yes. Real cool page. It started a few years ago, and you know, just people reminiscing about Fort Wayne. I mean, like some of the elders, you know, who are still around, are on there like talking about stuff, and then people talking about businesses that existed back in the day, and how it was more of a close knit community, and how it has like transitioned over the years.
That's good, Tyrone. How do we get back to that? Because there are still businesses in the community. There still are Black-owned businesses in the
Yes.
community.
Yes, quite a few.
How do we, as a people in the community, begin to support those businesses?
One of the biggest obstacles that comes to mind right now is we are creatures of habit, and we get in our comfort zones. Meaning, it's a concerted effort to seek out businesses and then patronize them. And an example I mean is, there were two brothers who I knew who owned gas stations. One was Ed Tharp, who had he had a dry cleaner, which I think is a car lot now, and then across the street was a Shell station. And then everybody knows the Peanut Man, Paul Bean, who has since passed.
Yes.
And Paul would come in the shop. And again, I have to cite him too as like a tremendous example. When you talk about hustle, that brother was like straight. If you look up hustle, his picture is like right there in the dictionary. I'm serious, because he was. I remember him being on the corner in the freezing rain or whatever. He keep it warm in his car. He'd jump out, sell a bag of peanuts, jump back in the car to keep warm. Then he went to, you see him out on Coliseum on the median selling peanuts.
I remember that.
And he would actually come into my shop just every so often, just to holler. Didn't want anything, just to kick it and see what's going on and everything. And just it was just something about him. It was just so engaging and everything. And again, tremendous example, very influential example. But then he went to having, his vending route, and he always told me, he said, man, I want to get a gas station convenience store to make my own peanut butter and different stuff like that. And he got to that point. And so I use him as an example, because one day I was going down, needed to get some gas. I was driving down Rudelsville, and I was going to Calhoun and Rudelsville, which was my gas getting place. Before I got there, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm getting ready to go get some gas. Let me go out here and get his brother my money. It's the same gas, same price, but I was, so used to going a particular pace. So a lot of it has to do with habit breaking, being conscious of, where you're going, what you do. Yes, exactly. And so that day I went out there and I got gas, and he and I ended up like talking and, about some different stuff, because it's always good kicking it with him and everything. But we have to break our habits. We have to make a concerted effort. When we go out to, let's say we want to go out to eat, there's a number of Black-owned restaurants here in Fort Wayne that, for whatever reason you may not know about. Okay. But if you look for the information, it's there. If you say, hey, Black-owned restaurants in Fort Wayne, you can find the information. And so, first we have to be of the mind to where we spend our money. And so, like I said, that can be a little bit challenging, because we are people of habit. And so, because
that's what this family, that the YouTube video, that's what they did. They lived a year buying black.
Right. Yes, exactly. You know what? And kind of sidebar, my wife told me something today, and it's I guess there's like a boycott for like I guess 50 Cent is online, and he's burning a Gucci shirt or whatever, because of Gucci and the blackface thing or whatever. And my take on that is, it's like, okay, they'll disrespect us. They disrespected us since we've been here. Okay, so we'll buy Gucci. They disrespect us, then we boycott. What do you do after the boycott? Shouldn't be a boycott. Don't boycott.
You say don't boycott?
No, don't buy it at all. Because a boycott, when I think of boycott is, okay,
we're not going to buy it right now.
Exactly. But when they do something to appease us, okay, then we'll go right back. We're people of habit.
Right.
A Gucci shirt is, back in the day, they the ownership was dictated was by a brand. Okay, they branded us. Okay, and for you out there who didn't see, I put the air quotes for ownership. Okay, now they brand us, but it's willing. It's like we give them money to promote their products, and then they turn around and disrespect us.
That's deep.
And a Gucci shirt is not going to wear any more on you than a shirt by a black designer or just a blank shirt. So boycott, like you said, it's like when they do whatever they're going to do to apologize or whatever. And we have such short memories. I'm like, how did that happen in the first place? In this day and age, something that egregious, something that insulting, okay? Somebody in your camp didn't pull your coattail and tell you, you might want to reconsider. So that tells you They did it without any consideration.
But you know what? Before your coat is pulled, you have to be willing to listen as well. So I'm going to take it back to the business. I shared with you something about a business owner who had slighted me, and you began to teach me about business and about what happens when you forgive. Well, you should forgive. You should talk to the business owner. He happened to be a black business owner. But when you were initially speaking to me, I didn't want to hear nothing you were saying. But you didn't back up. You continued, and it was on the phone. You continued to speak to me. You continued to teach. You continued to talk to me as a black man, as a black business owner, with respect. You just spoke to me, and at some point I said, okay, I guess I can try that. And so I said that to say, we as because I am older than as an elder, need to be teaching young people that reach out, that I can reach out and trust, but they need to be willing to listen to.
Oh, sure, most definitely. You and I feel like you're obligated to put the message out there. Whether they receive the message, that's another story.
Right.
But if you don't put it out there, they're definitely not going to get it.
Right.
And so like they say, if you don't ask, the answer is definitely no. So if you don't put it out there, but once you do that, then you fulfilled your obligation and your responsibility to this person. Then wherever it goes, it goes. And but yeah, because that came about because when we were talking the other day, we come at each other differently. We come. It's and I've experienced that. I think I had told you.
Now, what do you mean? You mean blacks come at blacks differently than they come at whites?
Too often. And again, and I tend to speak in generalities. I don't mean everybody.
Yes.
But it's enough of us that it's of a concern. And I think I related a couple stories to you. I had a lady who was an elder, little older lady, came in my shop, and I had done some shirts for her. Everything was cool. She was satisfied and everything. And just, of course, I can run my mouth, that. And we were just talking about some other stuff because I love talking to people.
Right.
And she told me, she just volunteered this information. She said, you know what? She said, I don't deal with black businesses very often. And I really inside, I was like, for real? But I was cool. And I asked her, I said, why? And she related some bad experience she had with some black owned businesses. And I kind of sort of get it. But to me, that doesn't make sense. Another story, there's a brother here who used to live here in Fort Wayne. I'll tell you, he's Kwaku Akan, formerly Carl Johnson. He was the director of Weiser Park Youth Center. And back in the day, if you looked in the phone book under roofing, he had this huge
yes.
He had this huge double-page ad in the phone book, and he told me once, he said, when you contracted to have your roof done with Sears, he said, guess who does it? I was like, who? He said, I do. And I was like, wow, that was like really, really impressive. And he told me that he had gone to this particular job to do this roof for this lady, and this lady told him that if I had known you were black, I wouldn't have had you do it. Wow. And it was a similar situation where he asked her why, and she said, well, I had a plumber who was black come out and do some work, and he screwed it up.
Okay.
He's like, well, what does that have to do with me? And he said, if it had been a white plumber who came out and screwed it up, you would have in turn called another white plumber. So why are you going to be suspect of me just because I'm black, because you had a quote bad experience with another business that was black? And so, like I said, this lady, she told me, she said, I don't deal with black businesses. And again, she had a bad experience, and how she ended up coming to me, I think it was word of mouth or whatever, and so hopefully I changed her attitude a little bit, from dealing with her and everything. But I see that often, us being suspect of each other, us having a preconceived notion that whatever our product or service is going to be less than, not on same par as far as like quality or whatever with other businesses or whatever. And when I told when I told you we have a collective mental illness?
Yes.
You wasn't hearing that.
I wasn't hearing that. Well,
but what I mean is, when we oh my gosh, it's so many different aspects. When we talk
this not
about,
going to be done in one meeting. You're going to have to come back.
Oh, mercy. I don't know, the response you might get from your listeners, you might be, bro, I don't think I'm going to have you back.
So,
we'll
and
see.
if you want to bring a couple more with you, a couple more people who actually, because I think this is an interesting topic that needs to be discussed.
Sure, most
I
definitely.
have not even delved into the fact of what's going on and how do we demand supplier diversity in our community. We haven't even talked about how can we demand that the dollars that are taken from our communities by the business owners, how do we demand that they put something back before they take it out of the community?
Exactly.
So those are very interesting topics. And then to talk about other businesses that are here to know how do you sustain Tygeron Graphics?
I think basically it's my wife tells me I'm one of the most charming people she ever met.
Oh.
And I think that that's why she married me. And she says that jokingly because every time we go someplace, I see somebody, hey, how you doing? I end up running my mouth, But I think a lot of it, I think in terms of business as a relationship, business is about relationships. People think it's about making money. Of course, that's a critical aspect of being in business. That's part of why you're in business. But relationships, I think business is about relationships, especially with us as a people. When we talk about community, when we talk about being family and everything like that, you can come and get some shirts from me, and it's an exchange of goods. You give me money, I give you shirts. Okay,
Right.
But I'm interested in you as a person. That's why, people will come by the shop. We end up taking care of business and end up talking for 10, 15 minutes or sometimes longer. And so I think that thinking in terms of establishing and sustaining relationships is a critical aspect of business, more so than, just the whole money, marketing the whole thing or whatever. And so most of my business over the years has come from word of mouth. And so I'm really, really appreciative of that. And, I try to do the best I can and make it affordable and everything. And I think that's a, critical aspect.